Hi everybody, it's Mark here. Thanks for watching. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the subject of loudness and how that relates to engineering and mastering techniques today for the amateur or home recording musician, and maybe some of the concepts you should familiarize yourself with and in order to help you make better sounding recordings. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the example. Now, I get asked, this is a question that I get asked from other people that are just kind of getting started out and understanding how to engineer and how to record themselves and make it sound as good as possible. And probably the question I get asked most often is, how do I make my recording sound as loud as, say, a commercial recording sounds? And that's a pretty big subject. Because really the process that gets a professionally engineered and mastered production to that level, really it kind of starts at the very beginning of the process, which is everything from the way the song is arranged and performed to the initial miking techniques, to the way it's mixed, and finally mastered. So it's really kind of a pretty in-depth conversation. We won't get into that. It's not just a conversation surrounding mastering, but really just going to touch on a few of the concepts behind this and try to give you a better understanding with a practical example. I guess the subject overall, you could call it the trend in popular music and in engineering recently. When I say recently, it's probably been about in the last 15 years. Has been the so-called loudness wars, which is the perception of a good recording is one that completely maximizes the dynamic range of the given recorded media, and for the most part of recent history, that's been the CD, which has got a very wide dynamic range of about 96 dB. And initially, early on in the CD's history, really the maximum dynamic range wasn't even coming close to being fully used. And then around probably 1992, the trend began to really maximize the entire dynamic range of that particular recorded media to where nowadays basically you see the 0 dB mark hit practically on every beat. So I really won't get into the debate of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. There's a lot of traditionalists and purists out there that believe that it's really resulted in poor sounded recordings, but I don't think anybody would argue that the trend these days is certainly more towards maximizing the perception of loudness to be as loud as possible. So I've imported a couple of tracks. I chose a track off of Pearl Jam's 10 album, which I think was originally released around 1992 when the whole so-called loudness wars began. To kind of give you a practical example here. Now, they recently released the 15th anniversary edition of this album. They did that. They released the original mix and master that was done on it on one CD, and then they released a remixed and remastered version of that album that was done with more, let's say, contemporary taste and techniques. So it is a useful example of the way that it was done, say 15 plus years ago, and the way that it was done today. I've imported both of those files into Logic, which is the DAW that I use. You could use any waveform editor or any DAW. It doesn't really matter, just to kind of give you a practical example here. You can already see the two waveforms look a little bit different. This is the original mix and master version of the track Once, and this is the remixed version of the track Once. Now, as you can see in the first track, the dynamic range of the original master was already pretty maximized, as as the waveform describes here. You can see that throughout the recording, the entire dynamic range of available was utilized. The difference, as you can see, are in the quieter parts of the song, and in this particular song, the quieter parts correlate to the verses. In the original, you can see that the overall level of the track was brought down fairly considerably compared to the rest of the song in the original, but in the remixed version, the remastered version, that really has disappeared, and really the quieter parts of the song are pretty much equal in terms of range as the louder parts of the song, which really are is the chorus in the song. So what I'm going to do is, really, we're not going to listen to this. On this exercise, I really want you to use your eyes to understand this as opposed to your ears. And I'm going to actually play through this, and I'm going to open up the multimeter tool in Logic to demonstrate this.
I admit it.